Yeah, you just mentioned thinking outside the box and innovation. How do you encourage people to think innovatively? What does that even really mean in your role as a leader?
Well, it's important. Psychological safety is absolutely so critical. I have a team of mental health and wellness experts, and we talk a lot about psychological safety and affording people that space to show up and be safe and have difficult conversations and be authentic. All those things. It's incredibly important. And in fact, some countries are mandating that you do psychological safety risk assessments, etc. I mean, it's becoming legislative. So yeah, it's incredibly important.
Thinking your career and all these plans that you made, what time you decide to have a mentor? Exists this time, I need a mentor now. I need to go forward, and I think this kind of competence I need to find. So will be in a different way. Exists this moment that you can share with us?
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Headline Podcast with me, Dr. Megan Tranter, and my amazing co-host, Andreza Araújo. And we've got a really special treat for you today with our guest. We have Glory Jewitt, who is a leader at Google, talking to us about her new book, which is called In the Pursuit of Glory. What I love about Glory's story is how she started on the front line and has had this brilliant career where she's moved through different places and different roles to now be a senior executive in the EHS team at Google. So Glory, thanks for having us here. And Andreza, hello.
Hello everyone. Hello for our audience. It's a pleasure to be here again, to have this special conversation, a special guest. So let's go.
We're so glad you're here. Hey, can you start by telling us, why did you write a book and why did you write this book?
Yeah. So writing a book has been something those close to me know I've been talking about for way too long, probably about over 10 years. I've always said my story should be told. You sort of alluded to it. I started in the trenches up in the oil sands, Canadian oil sands up in Fort McMurray, Alberta, as a laborer, and then later went on to be a global vice president at age 35, and now I'm the head of health and safety for Google. So it's been quite a journey. There's been a lot that has happened in between all of that. But yeah, it's been a kind of a bucket list item for me. I really wanted to help inspire other women and men. I've actually had a lot of positive feedback from men as well, but really the main avatar for the book is helping other women who might be stuck in their career or looking to get to the next level. And yeah, so it's personal bucket list for me, and with the aim of helping others.
I was reading about your story and it's very inspiring. So, can you tell us in all this journey if you separate some, challenging moments and big lessons to share with our audience today? So, it's really inspiring journey. So,
Yeah, absolutely. You got to read the book because there's a bunch of glory go-tos in there. But some of the big, I mean, I think it depends on the part of, obviously working up I was boots on the ground. So I was in large mega project construction. That part of my career was challenging for different reasons than sort of the corporate capacity later on. But being the only woman in a room probably carried through the majority of my career. But being out in construction, heavy industrial environment certainly has its challenges, right? Being in a position where I got into safety of authority and trying to enforce regulations with a bunch of men and, sometimes older men, much older men, was always a challenge to earn respect and gain influence. And then later, even in oil and gas, as I progressed in my career, even, I was always the youngest female in the room with a bunch of, I hate to say it, but white-haired, older men. And so earning that respect, getting those alliances, I think was always a challenge. There's been obviously different, as I progressed and did more regional or global roles, I talk about different countries I've worked in and some of the challenges that comes with just cultural norms. Being a female, I did a lot of work in the Middle East. So it, depending on which part of my career, there's been a lot of different lessons, and I do spell all of those out throughout the book. But yeah, I think adversity, I think I think some of the lessons is showing up as your authentic self. I really try to promote that in my story. I hid my femininity for a long time when I was coming up in construction because I was trying to fit in with the good old boys. And then later on in life realized, it's actually what sets me apart is my femininity. And once I started showing up as my authentic self, my career really took off. So that was a big lesson for me is, to show up. And I encourage that across all of my teams to come be who you are. And I think that reflects into all things of your life.
I understand that authenticity is a word important for you. How maintain authenticity, in different corporations, different roles? How we can maintain this authenticity?
Yeah, I think it's challenging yourself, right? So I
Yeah.
think imposter syndrome is a big thing. We talk a lot about that. I talk about it briefly in my book, but trying to just maintain and check yourself on it, right? And really remind yourself that you have a moral compass. I think, does it feel right? Does it not feel right? I think checking yourself on how you show up every day is huge. So I think recognizing it and kind of calling it out is a really good key step.
As you think about your leadership style, and I'm guessing you've grown into a certain leadership style as well, what's one leadership habit or characteristic, let's say, that you're proud of?
I think I hate to keep using the word authenticity, but I do think I'm a very authentic leader. I think have an open door policy. I hear from all different levels of my organization. I do a thing every week called my Glorious Coffee Chats, where people can put time on my calendar, and those are some of my most meaningful conversations of my week, to be honest, because I get a different perspective from different layers in the organization. But I think I'm firm but fair. I expect a lot out of my team. I have a high performing team, but I think it's that authentic. We can have a few laughs, we still get the job done, but just being open and authentic and having a bit of fun along the way is I think my brand at work. And I think my team would say that would be spot on.
You sometimes hear people talking about not feeling like they can show up as their true self at work. What advice would you have for those folks who feel that way?
Yeah, I think I'm really fortunate to work in a real progressive organization now where they really encourage that. When I went to Amazon, I don't know if I touched on that yet, but I left oil and gas and went into the tech industry and started in Amazon as their global logistics director of health and safety. And it was really refreshing. It's funny how different industries breed, different culture. But it was really refreshing. It didn't matter if you had purple hair and there was vice presidents with pink hair. And, as long as you could deliver the mail at the end of the day, that's all that mattered. And they really encouraged that authenticity. So I think, I think having those difficult conversations, if you feel like you can't, you're in an environment, not all companies are as progressive, unfortunately. There's still some industry that has some room to grow. But I think having those conversations with your direct line supervisor is a good place to start. We live in a world where it shouldn't matter where you work. You should be able to show up as your authentic self. So I think it's just calling it out, having those difficult conversations, and really challenging yourself just to not worry about what the noise in the lunchroom is, and just show up for yourself every single day.
In your book, you mention about the importance of create your own rules. So can you give us example about this? I love this concept, I think it's super important, and I think it's connected with authenticity. But what kind? And how you use this in your daily basis?
Yeah, I think you have to, back to that, we all have this moral compass, this internal drive where you know what is right or wrong and what feels good to you. So I think certainly along my career, I've learned a lot of lessons. And I think as you progress in your career, you'll figure out what that right mixes for you. But I've got lots of different glory go-tos in my book because, some of those, something as simple as just taking the seat at a table, walking into a room with confidence goes a really long way. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You're invited to a meeting because they value your opinion. So don't sit at the back of the room, sit in the middle of the room, shake the hands, walk in with confidence, speak up, make your voice known. Like I say, I think as women specifically, a lot of times we'll be hesitant to sit in the middle of the room. We'll sit in the back, or we'll be the first ones to jump up and take notes, or the first ones to fix the AV equipment. that's not why you're there. You're there because your voice matters, and I think that's a real important lesson I learned early on, and I think it really helped propel me later on in my career. It's just that walking with confidence and knowing you're there because your voice matters. So that's one of my glory go-tos. There's a bunch. Like I said, after each chapter, some parts of my book is personal, so I talk about my personal journey, including some failed relationships and hard lessons I've won along the way. So some of it is personal around kind of knowing your self-worth and not putting up with anything less. And that kind of can spill over into all aspects of your life. But yeah, there's a bunch of really good glory go-tos. And when you open up the book, there's an actual QR code and you can print them. It's a printable version, so there's lots of great tips in there that you can print off and take with you.
Okay, I'll riff from what you were just saying then. You know, when you were talking about your book, and especially some of these experiences that you've had over your life, whether it was in the work context, but also in the personal context, is there one either big moment or big learning that you had when you decided, hey, I'm going to do this differently and I'm going to do it my way?
Yeah, I think probably when I moved I took a role internationally. It was I was working in Canada. I just got into a corporate capacity out of the oil sands, and I was married at the time. And I got offered an opportunity to come down to Houston and lead a kind of a multinational project. And it was a big move for me. My husband at the time wasn't willing to support me, and that meaning he wasn't along for the ride. He was going to stay, and I knew had I stayed there, I would have always resented that decision. I really wanted to try new things. My career was bigger than just living in Edmonton, Alberta, and in the role that I was in. So I made the conscious decision to really follow my moral compass. I moved down to Houston by myself. It was lonely. There were some challenges, obviously, moving to a new country, new role. I all of a sudden, like I said, I was overseeing scopes of work in different countries that I'd never been to, large in the UAE and in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So all of that came with its own complexity, but it was a pivotal moment in my own journey to where I listened to my internal moral compass. I took the leap of faith, and it really paid off. It was one of the best decisions I ever made, but I had to really make that decision consciously and and take a leap of faith, really, and move to somewhere, a whole new arena, whole new location, and it was the best decision I ever made. So I think that was a pivotal moment, I think, in my career journey, and it really propelled me into an international role. And from then on, I went on to become a vice president after that. So it was listening to my inner intuition, taking calculated risks. I always talk about that. I think learning to trust your gut and say, this might be a bit of a risk, but it's probably a strategic move that I need to make to excel and get on to the next level. I think that's another really important lesson I've learned along the way. Sometimes you have to make a move to get to the next level. Sometimes it's not always vertical. Sometimes you have to go in different directions, but always served me well. Mm-hmm.
3,800 meters below the North Atlantic, it is still there. Not as a ruin, but as evidence. 15,000 workers, 3 million rivets. The largest movable structure ever built by man and designed to be invincible. But the Titanic didn't sink by accident. It sank by decisions. Decisions made in boardrooms, on spreadsheets, in silences that no one had the courage to break. How was it possible? The answer isn't down there. It's up here, in the decisions we make every day. Soon we will dive into the history, the facts, and what the world's most famous experts accident taught us. Titanic, the silence we still hear. It's not about the tragedy. It's about what built this tragedy and what we learned from it.
Do you ever wonder whether you're making the impact and have the influence that you're really, really looking for in your corporate career, perhaps if you're an entrepreneur or doing something else? Well, I offer one-on-one coaching services for purpose-driven leaders who are really looking to find some way of increasing their impact and their influence. So if this is something you're interested in, give me a call, send me a DM, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
I would like to move into the leadership. In terms of leadership philosophy, how do you apply this? What is your leadership philosophy first? And how do you apply to inspire, to engage, and commit your team?
Yeah, I think you have to surround yourself. A good leader surrounds themselves with people that are probably a lot more brilliant than you are, right? I have an incredible team. I don't micromanage them. They know they have very clear expectations. I hold my team, as I mentioned, pretty high in terms of execution and delivery, but I allow them the leash to make the decisions and manage their businesses, and know that I am there if they're, if they do fall or make a misstep along the way. I am there to have their backs as long as they've, put some thought into making calculated decisions, et cetera, for the business. So I think that's one. I think, again, we talked about authenticity. I don't want to keep drilling on that, but having, affording them the space to show up as themselves and is huge within my team. And that doubles down into the organization. I expect them to do the same. Obviously, my business, we're building data centers, and we're building them at hyperscale at the moment. Having every decision bubble up to glory isn't the way we're going to move quickly. So it's finding this autonomy where we can make quick decisions at a localized level. And again, knowing that my team, as long as they're thinking about them and making calculated decisions, knowing that I'll have their back if they do misstep. But we have to make agile decisions in order to move quickly. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm guessing that at various points in your career, you've been under pressure. And even now, when you were describing, building these data centers and having to be agile and make decisions quickly, what advice would you have for others who feel under pressure with what they're doing, whether it's leading a team, whether it's their own, leading themselves? What do you think they should do?
Yeah, we're always under pressure, right? And I think the higher you climb, unfortunately, the more the pressure mounts. I think, so it's a good question. I think it depends on what you're working on, but I think taking care of yourself first and foremost is huge. I am careful with my calendar. So I have wonderful admins that protect my day wonderfully. So that's important to me. It has to be the right balance, or you'll burn yourself out. Getting a mentor, getting a mentee, having someone you can talk to is important. Everyone needs that person they can lean on, even if it's just a vent or something. If you're having a frustrating day, or someone that you trust to help walk you through something you're struggling with. I think that's important. Getting a good network throughout your organization, I think, always helps. Having that that person you can pick up the phone and call and something specific. Knowing that there's people, SMEs around you that can help support, I think, is good. But for me, a lot of it's work-life balance. I know that's cliche. A lot of people say that, but being really intentional with my time has helped me, because people will put time in your calendar no matter what. And if you don't be a little bit selfish, your time will get eaten, and to which you can burn out quite easily. So I think that helps. Getting good rest, all the things, all the health things, all the mental health and wellness things, I think, go a long way. Exercise, eating, trying to eat right, all the things. Not all the time, but for the majority of the time, sleep is really important to me. Yeah. But I know I'm all over the map there, but I think I think being personal, being smart with your time and being a bit selfish, I think goes a long way.
I was reading about you, and I was impressive because you receive a recognition from the Houston Business Journal about human who means business. So, what is the biggest impact that you believe that the human women in leadership they can transform in company's culture?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's data to support this that a diverse team is a highly functioning team. So it's not just women, but I think it's that diversity across your team. A diverse panel of thought is just the way. If we all thought the same way and showed up the same way, what a boring world it would be, wouldn't it? Isn't it? But specific to women, I'm obviously a little biased, but I think women, we have the power to juggle so many balls in the air and navigate complexity with, I just think, such grace. And, I do think we are the super women, with all the things that we juggle in our daily lives, from being mothers to wives to working. So I think, yeah, my personal experience, I do have quite a few women on my team. They're not just all women, but they can navigate complexity. They can make, they're agile. They can juggle a lot. And within our organization, we certainly need that today with all the growing business that we're executing today. So, I think we're detail oriented for the most part.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but it's important.
Speaking of
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say it's important to have women at the helm. I think it's important for other women to see women at the helm. We're still not there from an equality perspective. I think, and I don't have the statistic in front of me, but how many women are in executive roles. I think it's still pretty small compared to men, but it's important that we see those. I have some amazing leaders at Google that are women that I look up to. And it's important to see someone that you can relate to, whether it's women or if it's, diversity in terms of race, et cetera, that people can relate to and say, you know what, if that person can do it, I can do it as well. That's important.
And speaking of high-performing teams, what have you seen high-performing teams do that average teams don't do?
High-performing teams make decisions quickly. They move fast. They don't have to, it's that 80-20 rule. You have it half baked and move, execute. I think lower performing teams are slow. So I think it's important to, like, as we kind of mentioned around, making quick decisions. I think there's a lot of really good leadership principles that you could tie into high performing teams. Disagreeing and committing, going, maybe might not all agree on something, but we're all going to rally and support the decision and move. What else? We talked about diverse teams. I think that's important. Sorry, you guys got put me on the spot here. I have to cut this out. But I think the biggest thing, I think it's moving quick. Like, I think the highest performing, setting really clear goals, setting aggressive goals, and really moving quickly and holding your team accountable to execute against that is certainly the success we've had. Another big piece, I think, to high performing teams is thinking outside of the box, right? Innovation is so key right now. AI, obviously, we're in a new world. We're here. It's using technology is going to really set us apart in the next few years, I think. We're already using it across all the verticals within my business, and it's pushing innovation throughout our teams that helps us move quicker and helps us make decisions faster. When it comes to occupational health and safety, we've relied a lot on humans and process and paper and, the whole old school way of executing. And now to get to the next level, I truly believe technology is going to be the key to get us to the next iteration of health and safety. Automation, getting humans out of the line of fire, all those things are really important. But I think innovation is huge.
Yeah, you just mentioned thinking outside the box and innovation. How do you encourage people to think innovatively? What does that even really mean in your role as a leader?
Yeah, so for my role, I have three basic concepts when it comes to health and safety. We want to reduce risk. So obviously that's first and foremost. We want to innovate for today and tomorrow. This is part of it's built into sort of and then we want to care for our people and planet. So those are sort of the three pillars I base my sort of mantra, and I have for years, to be honest. So it's part of my expectations. It goes into their expectations to where we challenge our teams. It's actually put into our expectations every quarter on how are you going to unblock? How are you going to move quicker? How are you going to innovate? What are some things we can do with technology to help reduce risk? So all of that is fed in from the top down into their expectations, and it's just continuing to make it a priority, allowing the space to do it. Also, you can talk a lot about innovation and technology and best in class. People like to throw around the name best in class. Well, what does that really mean, and how do you get there? You have to afford the space in your teams and financially support it to really make the difference and afford innovation into your business. Otherwise, you'll continue to do what you've always done, right? I think AI it's just the opportunity is endless. It's just so incredible. The stuff we're using this for, anything from like root cause analysis to you name it. It is the old days of procedures and method statements are done. We're using chatbots and all the really innovative things that will make our lands a lot safer and more efficient. So it's cool. It's an exciting time.
And how connected is Glory with, for example, we talk about the big trends, AI. We talk about balance, life balance, and how you can connect all this stuff with psychological safety.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's important. Psychological safety is absolutely so critical. I have a team of mental health and wellness experts, and we talk a lot about psychological safety and affording people that space to show up and be safe and have difficult conversations and be authentic. All those things. It's incredibly important. And in fact, some countries are mandating that you do psychological safety risk assessments, etc. I mean, it's becoming legislative. So. It's incredibly important. We all want to show up and afford a safe space and feel like we can be, open and human and honest and not worried about any repercussions, etc. at work. So I think it's so important, and it breeds trust. That's another big thing within high performing teams. It's a culture of trust. If you don't have trust, you're kind of battling against each other. But I think that psychological safety certainly just breeds a whole host of really positive things.
Thinking about what you've been talking about with high-performing teams, psychological safety, trust, and the way that you lead, for those who are listening today, what would be one piece of advice that you would give them?
In terms of leadership or in terms of leadership, one piece of advice. I think coming up in my career, I always had a plan. And the plan doesn't always have to go the way you actually script it out on paper, but I always had a goal. Every year, I'm very intentional about setting my intentions. This book was one of the things that I was very intentional about doing, and I was gonna knock it off my list last year. But even professionally, it could be personally. I'm very big on setting a plan in certain aspects of my life, and I'm big on also the power, like that, visualizing. I'm going to have this. I think it's actually it's been very successful in my career. I vision that next role. I can see myself in that spot. I can see myself in this location. I can see myself with this husband, whatever, right? Whatever it is. But it's, so I think that it's always been part of my secret sauce is having that plan. What's the next role I'm working to? And then making that known. That's the piece, right? So you can have it, but it's making that known to the people that have influence in getting you there, taking action, even if it's small. Taking steps towards that goal. You may not always, like I say, achieve it when you want to achieve it, but making, conscious steps to move towards something that you really want, I think is been super successful in all facets of my life. It could even just be being a more present mom. It doesn't even have to be something at work. It could be something in my personal life where I consciously am working on something, but having that plan and writing it down has helped me tremendously.
Do you ever find that people can say what they don't want, but then they don't know what they do want?
A lot of people don't plan, right? It's hard to make a plan. And so it could be small. And like I say, if you read the book and you go through it, it's one of the things, like even if something inspires you to do something small, then it's worth the read, right? Or in any aspect of your life, if you do something and it's, okay, I'm going to work out 7 days a week. Well, maybe you're only working out 5. at least you're moving towards a direction with something. But professionally, I always knew what role I wanted, and then I really focused on getting there. Who do I need to, what are the connections I need to make? What are the tools I need in my toolkit to get there? Who are the decision makers that can help get me there? Who can be a sponsor to help, support some of those decisions? Those are all critical things. And then, like we sort of talked about, kind of making calculated risk taking, right? So if it's, I'll take that role over here because it might get me up to the role I really want, but it's a stepping stone. And so taking calculated risks is also super important and something that's really served me well.
3,800 meters below the North Atlantic, it is still there. Not as a ruin, but as evidence. 15,000 workers, 3 million rivets. The largest movable structure ever built by man and designed to be invincible. But the Titanic didn't sink by accident. It sank by decisions. Decisions made in boardrooms, on spreadsheets, in silences that no one had the courage to break. How was it possible? The answer isn't down there. It's up here, in the decisions we make every day. Soon we will dive into the history, the facts, and what the world's most famous accident taught us. Titanic, the silence we still hear. It's not about the tragedy. It's about what built this tragedy and what we learned from it.
Do you ever wonder whether you're making the impact and have the influence that you're really, really looking for in your corporate career, perhaps if you're an entrepreneur or doing something else? Well, I offer one-on-one coaching services for purpose-driven leaders who are really looking to find some way of increasing their impact and their influence. So if this is something you're interested in, give me a call, send me a DM, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
Thinking your career and all these plans that you made, what time you decide to have a mentor? Exists this time, I need a mentor now. I need to go forward, and I think this kind of competence I need to find. So we'll be in a different way. Exists this moment that you can share with us?
It's never too soon. So even when I think back to when I was literally hauling scaffolding material on a $9 billion, I was a hairdresser the week before. Okay, so talk about a fish out of water. I was totally out of my element. I was totally out of my depth. And even then I latched on, or I created an unofficial mentor with a safety lady. Her name was Marge. I talk about her in my book. And she kind of took me under her wing and sort of showed me the ropes. She was a safe space that I could. So it doesn't even matter. It doesn't have to be a high profile, position. We all can use a mentor in any role, I think. So I don't think it's ever too early to start. And then again, that mentor helped even back then shape. You need to go get this course. I can get you into this, entry level position if you do the X. So I just think, it's never too early, and it's never. And also, you're never too senior not to have one. I still have one. I have a mentor and I have a sponsor. And I actively meet with them, and actually working with a leadership coach as well, that I continue to do, because I find there's no better gift than to invest in yourself, and I try and also do that. So it's something I try to do. So doing continuous education, no matter what that looks like for you, is really important. As when I pick this year, I'm going to focus on AI. I want to take some certifications around that. We have, obviously, within being Google, we have a lot of that resource at our fingertips. But I really want to be intentional about building out that skill set, because it is the way of the future. And I say that a lot to younger people that ask me that question. If you would go into one thing, or my kids ask me, what should I be focusing on? Anything AI right now, you cannot go wrong. It is the way of the future, AI ML. So yeah, it's here.
A lot of people are really interested in AI, and it seems to come up in every single conversation. If you had some advice for our listeners here, what would that advice be? And go as broad as you like. I'm sure that you have seen a lot of things and have been deploying things, but what would you say to us, and especially folks who see it and maybe they're scared of it, or they actually don't even know what to do next?
Yeah, I think AI is such a hot topic, right? To your point, I think people that don't know it or don't use it, there's, this whole fear that we're gonna, the world is gonna be taken over by machines, etc. It is absolutely fascinating. The amount of efficiency it has brought into our workplace already is incredible. This is such a powerful tool to help in a positive way. I mean, yes, and Google's mission is to obviously use this as responsibly as we can. So they're very vocal, and that's public. We made that public statement. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously there is the dark side to AI, I think, but that people are concerned about. But honestly, there's so much positive that overrules, at least from where I sit. That just in terms of work process, even with my kids, it's education. So not even just in the workplace, but at all aspects of my life, like it's incredible. It's making, all things easier, faster, quicker. There is, some risk when it comes to workplace, that we're eliminating jobs. And I think there is a bit of truth to that. So I think if I had to give my listeners one thing, or people coming up in their career, try to think about what those careers look like that will need humans in them. And my son's in college right now, and he came home, he wanted to get into construction management. I said, that's what they're telling people to get into, trades, and getting out into industry where we're still always going to need people at the helm. So I think thinking about that consciously is important as people think about their careers. But yeah, I don't, you cannot know enough about it. Get out, take the courses, dive into it, play around with it. It's just absolutely incredible how much efficiency it's already drove into my team and business.
What's your favorite or best learning that you've had most recently?
Oh God, I'm gonna think about that. Favorite or best learning most recently? Well, sorry, you put me on a spot here. We can cut all this out, right? All this air. Favorite learning recently? Well, I learned that writing a book is not going to get you rich. That's an interesting lesson I've learned. Not that I was doing it to make money, but it's a slow burn, a bit of a slow burn. But I think I set a goal. I don't know if it was a recent lesson, but I worked hard. It took a year and a half to write that book, and I think a real value is following through, and I did it. And that day, you hold that physical book in your hand was a pretty monumental moment for me. It was a real big dream of mine for a long time. So I think, just believing in yourself, being vulnerable. It took a lot. I was very vulnerable in this book. And that's a lesson I talk a bit about, where, again, as you're coming into your authentic self, and maybe it's just even getting older and being more secure in your career and who you are as an individual, you care less about what the noise is or what people think. And that's been a really, really powerful, I'm doing kind of the fun things. I have my podcast that is totally nothing like what I do in my day job, but it's a fun passion project for me. The book was a passion project for me. I think I was so concerned about, and I still am, but you have to be this professional and kind of worried about kind of exposing some of the other authentic things that I actually really love and care about. And so I think that was a really powerful thing that I embraced last year, was just sort of stepping away from the worry of what people's perception might be. I can still be a global head of environment, health, and safety and do really, really well at my job. And I can still like fashion, and I can still be, like pop culture and other things. And those two things can still exist. And so it was a lesson for me to, or not like, it was a learning that, don't worry about what the noise is, and embrace your authenticity. And, that was a huge shift for me last year professionally.
And looking ahead, what do you see, in terms of what you want to do? What is the next, book, podcast? So I think when we are alive and we are discovering ourselves, right? What we want, what we don't want. So what is the expectation for the people that are, watching this interview now? What is the expectation from Gloria for the next 5 years ahead?
Yeah, I always
It's
keep joking.
possible to thinking 5 years. I don't know, because sometimes it's also it's long time, 5 years. So
Yeah, I think I'm really happy with where I'm at right now professionally with my career. So I think continuing to build, my team's expanding. I love the organization I work for. So that's number one, very important to me, to maintain that and continue to evolve with the business and the landscape and all of that, I think is very important to me. I think my husband and I love to travel. I'd like to continue to have some personal experiences, continuing our journey around the world. We love, love, love to go see new culture and experience. He's a pilot, so it pays to marry a pilot. That's another good lesson I learned the last couple of years. So continuing to do that, making memories with my children. My kids are getting older; they're starting to leave the nest. So I think being intentional about making those memories is important to me. But in terms of the big boulders, I think that's it. Kind of, I said to my husband, I said, you know what? Part of my goal this year is to slow down a little bit and to have, spend a little bit more time with the people around me and the loved ones, because I am very, very busy. So trying to take more time for memories and spending it with the people that I love will probably be important to me in the next 5 years. But continuing to grow, I always want to continue to grow professionally and personally still.
I was just going to say, what a beautiful way of closing us out. Because often people, when they get asked that question, it's, this big long list. And I guess especially for you as a planner, because, you mentioned that you like planning and so forth. Yet giving yourself that space to actually enjoy life as well as think about your legacy. It's amazing. And huge congrats on the book. Huge congrats on that.
Yes.
And you were so brave, so courageous with it. As well as obviously sharing learnings and glory rules and all that sort of stuff. But I've learned a lot today, especially about authenticity and, bringing that authenticity forward. And I hope that our listeners and viewers here hear that in what your story is and what you've been talking about. It's absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Glory.
Yeah, for me, well, wow, good to hear you, and you inspire me, because I was excited about this conversation, because your journey is very, challenging for us. I am from Brazil, so when we saw a woman, inspire us, come from oil, gas, is a heavy sector. We know it's hard worker. So in health and safety. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for your contribution to inspire us to continue, because the journey is so long and we need to inspire ourselves.
Yeah, we have to lift each other up. I think in closing, thank you again for having me. But we have come a long way. I think in the last 25 years, I've seen progression when it comes to equality in the workplace and diversity in the workplace, but we still have work to do. And so I think it's just supporting and encouraging, again, everyone, not just women, but everyone to show up authentically and allowing them to have that safe space. Is just, if you take nothing else away, I think that's the most important lesson, is encourage equality across the business. And, you'll see some positive results because of it, I think. So thank you for having me. A pleasure to talk to you both, and look forward to speaking with you soon.
Before we wrap up, I want to sincerely thank you for staying with us until the end. If this episode sparked a reflection, create that health discomfort, or even left you with a question that doesn't yet have an answer, then it has already fulfilled its purpose. This podcast does ending when the audio stops. It continues in the conversations you have afterwards, in the decision you rethink, and in the small adjustment that can make a big difference. If this content resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Follow the podcast, turn on notifications, and keep walking with us on this journey of learning, questioning, and growing together. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your presence. We will see you in the next episode. Bye!